Now, it's a bizarre job, but people are prepared to do it for free. At award ceremonies in the US, seat fillers are employed to make sure the venue looks full. Journalist Charlotte Laws has done it, and she's on the line. Good afternoon, Charlotte.
Hello.
In your experience as a seat filler, I should say, the other people you met who did it, and you weren't getting paid for doing this, why did they do it?
You know, they just really liked being in the same room with famous people. They thought it was exciting. And it's funny because, I mean, to me it was very surprising that they liked doing it so much because, you know, there were so many regulations. You couldn't talk to the famous people. You couldn't bring in a camera and take pictures. You had to stand outside and wait 2.5 hours before the event. It was 110 degrees that day. An hour and a half of that wait was in the heat. So to me it was very surprising, but everybody I talked to was enthusiastic. They loved doing it. And it's basically unpaid extra work is really what it is, but they seem to enjoy doing it. And the company told me they have 33,000 people in the database, and they fly in from all over the world, from Ireland, from New Zealand, from South Africa, just to go to these shows. It's really amazing.
So most of them, all of them had done this kind of thing before?
Well, not everybody that I spoke to had done it before, but many people had. I mean, some people had been to 10 shows, some people had been to 5. Some people, it was their first time, but they were with a friend who had been before. That's usually how it worked. You could come and you could bring like 3 people with you is what the invitation said. And so when I went with a friend who had done it before.
What kind of shows would they be doing, and was there a hierarchy of shows? For instance, was being a seat filler at the Oscars, you know, as good as it got?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is sort of a hierarchy in a sense. I mean, if you get in with the company, you're going to get preferential treatment. And, I mean, mostly they're doing the MTV Awards, they're doing the Oscars, they're doing the Emmys, they're doing the Grammys, but they also do lesser shows. You know, they'll do anything that's televised where the producer needs to fill those empty seats. You know, they will get people. Usually they get about 300 people for a show, is what I was told. The show I attended had 827 seat fillers.
My
so that
gosh.
was a huge number, but it was also not a very high-profile show, and there were very few celebrities in the actual audience. Most of them were backstage. I went backstage afterwards against the rules, but you weren't supposed to do that. We were, you know, told not to do that, and obviously I broke the rules, so I won't be invited back, but that's okay.
Now, to explain exactly what a seat filler does, is it the case that, say, you're a seat filler at the Oscar, George Clooney goes up to get his Oscar, you fill his seat until he comes back again?
Exactly, that's how it works. And sometimes they're permanent empty seats on the first, second, third row, so you'll end up sitting there the whole show. Other times it's a celebrity who's going on stage to perform or to get an award, as you said, and then they come back, and then you give them the seat back. And then you'll wait and take another seat when they have another empty seat. And it's only for the cameras because they want the audience to look full, and that helps the production look good. So that's why they do it. It's basically an extra role. I mean, you're an extra. You're sitting where the producer wants you to sit for camera purposes.
So there must be a dress code then. You can't be sitting there in your skanky T-shirt.
There is a dress code. They tell you what to wear. That's what was shocking on this particular show because, as I said, it was 110 degrees in L.A., and it said you were supposed to wear long pants and a sweater, and I actually abided by those rules, and a lot of people didn't. A lot of people just wore sundresses and went, you know, too bad I'm not wearing the sweater at 110-degree weather. But usually you would actually be more dressed up for most shows. This was more of a casual type of production. It was called Teachers Rock, and it was a kind of a performance show, lots of singers, lots of entertainers, kind of to, you know, bring teachers' work to light and to raise money for their charity, that kind of thing.
Yes, that's why there weren't many celebrities there. And was there kind of like a wrangler who was in charge of all of you and telling you where to go?
There were a bunch of wranglers. Yeah, there were several, I don't know how many exactly coordinators there were or supervisors, but there were, I saw at least, I'd say, 4, and there were probably more, because I was only on one side. You know, there were seat fillers kind of standing in long lines in different areas. So I think in my line, which was pretty long, there were probably about 4 supervisors, but I saw seat fillers on the other side of the auditorium and other places, so I assume there were quite a few. I didn't get the exact count.
And were they quite strict with you? in terms of ordering you around the place?
Pretty strict. It was hard to be strict because there were so many of us. It became hard to be strict once we got into our seats because, you know, people could get up or get down. They wouldn't be able to really keep track of you because there were so many people. But as I said, this was also, I think, a little more lax. I mean, they weren't as strict as they would have been if it had been the Emmys or the Oscars. They'd be more strict than they were at this event because they weren't as concerned because of the fact there weren't many celebrities in the audience. But, you know, still, I mean, you couldn't go to the bathroom without being escorted by one of these people. And at the end of the show, they wanted you to file out, which I did not do, but that's what you were supposed to do. It would probably be fairly easy because there's so many people. If you really wanted to kind of sneak away from them, you probably could do it if you really wanted to do that. But you would be in a situation where you didn't have a camera, you didn't have, you know, things that you might want to have. You wouldn't have that because they actually had metal detectors and they checked you before you came in the door if you were a seat filler.
Wow. But presumably for the seat fillers, it can't be because of their love of sitting that they're doing this, that they are hoping against hope, despite all the rules, that they are going to meet a celebrity or rub shoulders with a celebrity somehow.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think just sitting next to somebody or, you know, having, you know, people right in front of you or behind you is very exciting to them. Also, I think a lot of them hope to get on camera. And, you know, when you get on camera, then your friends back in wherever, Ohio or wherever it may be, call you up and say, oh, I saw you at the Emmys in the second row. You know, so I think there's a little prestige with that, and they can tell people I went to the Emmys, and then they, you know, you never know what'll happen. But as I said, I mean, you definitely have to, you know, not abide by the rules if you're going to be schmoozing, talking, trying to sneak backstage. Any of that kind of stuff is, you know, prohibited, and if they find out, they won't allow you to be a seat filler in the future.
But had some of the ones you met, the seat fillers you met, had they had encounters with celebrities, even, you know, very transitory ones?
Yeah, I mean, one girl I talked to had actually sat next to Paris Hilton, and Paris Hilton actually gave her champagne.
Oh.
She actually talked to Paris quite a bit. She wasn't supposed to, but, you know, Paris was giving out glasses of champagne to the people right around her. And so she was drinking during the show. And then somebody else was sat next to Jim Carrey, but the supervisor was very strict and said, you can't talk to anyone. So she completely ignored him, and, you know, to the point where she thinks he actually was offended. So yeah, so some people had those experiences. No one else, I don't believe anyone else I spoke to on that day had actually spoken with anybody, but they had sat near people. You know, they had kind of, you know, been right next to people, and they somehow thought that was very exciting. And I think it's just people want to, you know, live the lifestyle of the rich and famous. I mean, there was a study that said that 30% of the people out there, this is the United States, in Ireland, and in England, want to be famous. I mean, that's a primary goal for them. And I think that, you know, it just kind of, you get to taste it. It's that 15 minutes of, you know, fame, or that 15 minutes of excitement, and seeing what it's like to, you know, brush elbows with the, you know, the rich and famous. And so I think people really enjoy it for that reason. I mean, for me, it wasn't really much because I've been to dozens of award shows, and I've many events.
That's what I was going to say, Charlotte, that you, as you mentioned, you did get backstage, and you do have form in this regard, in that you were kind of a semi-professional gate crasher back in the day.
That's true. I wrote a book in the 1980s about how to, you know, crash into the Oscars, to get past Secret Service, to date your favorite star. Yeah, I wrote a book about that. So I did that a lot back in the 1980s, and I've done it sometimes, you know, some since. I mean, not as much as I used to when I was, you know, 16, 20 years old. I was doing it a lot because it was extremely fun, and I thought it was quite profitable as far as career. I mean, there were a lot of advantages I had from doing it, but yeah, I've done it many, many times. So to me, this was small potatoes. It's like,
how do you get past Secret Service?
Well, I mean, I did it a couple of times. In 2004, John Kerry was a candidate for president, and they had this big fundraiser. It was $25,000 a person was the top ticket, and which of course I can't afford. And the cheapest ticket was $1,000 a person, which I also could not afford. And so basically, you go to the metal detector. You always go to the metal detector, and I basically at that one, I basically just kind of slipped past, and Secret Service was screaming at me, going, "Wait and see your ticket, come back here. And I just kept going. I feel like I didn't even hear them. And they never came after me. And then I snuck backstage. There was an actress going backstage, and one of the tricks is to kind of befriend a famous person as they're on their way backstage, so it looks like you're part of their group. And then the security doesn't question you because they think you're with the celebrity. And so I went backstage at that event afterwards, and it was like so VIP. I mean, it was Barbara Streisand and Robert De Niro and Ben Affleck and Ben Stiller and Leonardo DiCaprio and Neil Diamond. I mean, it was only celebrities, and John Kerry, and it was like, and me.
Cool.
So it was really a very exciting event, and it was, and I actually went to the tail end of the recent George Clooney fundraiser for Obama, but I went after Secret Service, like literally after the president had left. So I didn't have to crash Secret Service per se,
okay,
but I did go up to the house, even though I wasn't supposed to, and I parked in the driveway thinking that George Clooney was going to tow my car, but luckily no one towed my car, and I was able to hang out there and meet the people that were remaining at the event.
But when you're at one of these events, and just say, you're in there, you're doing shots with Ben Affleck and Neil Diamond, and everybody's talking away, having a good time. When they say to you, like, who are you? Do you say, oh, I just crashed, or do you make up a story? I'm a dowagist from Eastern Europe.
Well, no, I'm just truthful about who I am. I don't say that I crashed. I never say that. But I just say, they don't ask you, how did you get in here? I mean, they just assume that if you're there, you're supposed to be there. So I just say whatever it is. I mean, I'm actually an elected politician. I'm serving my 4th term in Southern California on a local council, and I'm a commentator at NBC, and I'm an author. And, I just say, I write articles, and I say whatever I say, but I'm always truthful about who I am.
Okay, have you ever been thrown out of anywhere?
There was one event, the only time that there was a party, and this was also in the 1980s, there was a private party that Sylvester Stallone and John Travolta had, and I got in too early. And so, when you get in too early, it's not good because they see you stick out like a sore thumb. It's like, who's she? So they kicked me out because they said, who are you? You're not supposed to be in here. So then I went in another door. Again, it was still too early, which is really stupid, and they kicked me out again. And then I got in a third door, but I waited until the event had kind of like people started going in. And the third time I got in, a third door, and then I stayed in for the rest of the event. So that was the only time, funny enough, which is really surprising. You would think I would not get into something or I'd get kicked out of something, but so far, knock on wood, it's never happened, other than that one event. But I did eventually get in and stay.
It's good to know. Persistence is the key. Charlotte, thanks a million for talking to us today. That's Dr. Charlotte Laws. Charlotte, thanks a million.
Thank you.
Coming up next, movies and booze.
Moncrief on Newstalk 106 to 108.